Good morning, welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Thursday, February the 6th, 2025, and it is absolutely gorgeous morning here. It is warm, but not hot. Just beautiful. The only problem is I'm walking straight into the sun at the moment. You'll see it in a second when I get out from under these trees that Neil's dragged me under, but yeah, just a beautiful morning, and I'm not sure what the temperature is going to be today, but at this time, very pleasant to go for a nice leisurely walk. Onto the boxing, and one thing that caught my eye yesterday, and normally when I get home, I'll just jump on the computer and do a couple of things, and I'll put get the paper, see what the news of the day is, and I jumped on the Herald Sun website, and it was a story that had just been uploaded, and as I said, really got my attention because it was about Jarvis and Jeff Fenech, and the word is, well, not the word, because Jeff pretty much confirmed it, is that the two have split again. Now, what are we, about 5 weeks out from the Keith Thurman fight, and there's obviously trouble in paradise between Jeff Fenech and Jarvis, and Jarvis wasn't interviewed or asked for a comment, but Jeff Fenech was, and yeah, he pretty much confirmed that there is some issues there, and at this stage he's not training Jarvis. And well, it's a really intriguing one, this one, because look, the two have been together ever since Brock was a kid when he first started boxing. He's had that one fight where he wasn't with Jeff, and they've since patched things up, and now obviously things have gone sour again. But yeah, 5 weeks out from the fight, not ideal. And look, the reasons given, this is according from Jeff, or to Jeff, and there's always two sides of the story, so we'll wait and see what Brock has to say. And I've still got a sneaky suspicion they might just patch things up in the lead up to the fight, then maybe they might have a talk after that. I don't know, but maybe both guys will realise that this is such a big fight that maybe let's just put all the differences aside and get through this one and see what happens. But according to Jeff, Brock wasn't happy. You would have seen that they did a podcast together a couple of weeks ago, and they was on the couch with No Limit, and Brock apparently wasn't happy that Jeff commented that he'd bought his own house, and pretty much he was proud of him because at this stage of his life, how he developed and matured, and now he'd bought his own house. Now, I, for one, can't see a problem with that, to be honest. I mean, you've got someone that you love and respect and admire and everything else saying they're proud of you because you just bought your new house or your first house. I'm not sure, but that, according to Jeff, didn't go down too well with Brock. And looking back at that interview, I had a quick look at it yesterday. Brock did look visibly annoyed when Jeff did say that. So again, I don't know what is behind it, but the other thing I think was that Jeff has probably made no secret this probably wasn't his preferred track to go down. Now, I have made mention of this in numerous videos or lives or whatever it might be, that my opinion is that Jeff didn't want this fight. I think he thought it was a step too far for Brock at this stage of his career. Brock's obviously disagreed and probably taken the approach that, well, I'm 27 years old now, I've got to take a chance at some stage, and has taken the fight. No Limit have obviously come to them and said, look, we need someone for Keith Thurman to maybe get in with here in Australia, with the possibility of fighting Tim Tszyu down the track, and Brock has jumped at it. I was going to say his dad might have had something to do with it, but I'm not sure. I've sort of tied him in with a bit of his decision making, but the more I sort of look at it, I've got a feeling that Brock's just become his own man, is making his own decisions. Now, that could be to his benefit or to his detriment, but the interview that Jeff did with Jay McAllister straight after the announcement, I remember saying at the time, the way Jeff spoke, it wasn't his normal energy, his body language, his tone. I could tell that he wasn't across this fight as far as being on board. And I've got a feeling that's what's happened. Now, what's intriguing about the whole situation is that Jeff's been there since day one with Brock. I mean, I promoted Brock twice early in his career, once in 2017, just on my standalone show, and then in 2019 with Dean Lonergan with on the undercard of Jeff Horn and Michael Zarafa. And he was only a kid in his very, very early 20s, so very, very impressionable. And I remember back then Jeff was his trainer, manager, advisor, mentor, well, you name it, Jeff was it. Brock was just under Jeff's, I was going to say control, well, maybe that is the word, maybe it is control, but very much under Jeff's tutelage, and nothing happened with Brock without Jeff's go-ahead. I've got a feeling what's happened now is that Brock, now being a 27-year-old, has started to maybe push back a little bit with some of Jeff's decisions, and we get the situation we're in now, where they've obviously split before, and that was over the weight issue. Brock wanted to campaign a lot heavier. Jeff wanted to keep Brock at sort of 135 to 140, whereas Brock wanted to go to 154, if not 160, and that's why they split in the first place. They did have that one fight apart, and of course now reconciled. But look, if I'm being honest, I think it's a little bit of both ways. I just think that, yes, Brock is probably at the stage of his career where he could say to Jeff, hey, I can make sort of my own decisions as far as these sorts of things goes. But the thing you got to remember is Brock hasn't got a manager as such. Jeff's always been the manager and trainer. Now I've got a feeling that Jeff's a little bit put out, and it's a little bit awkward because now he's probably been told he's just a trainer and that's it. Just do what we're paying you to do, if that is the case, and you be the trainer and we'll worry about the business side here. But who is the manager? Who is making the decisions? Now, if it is Brock himself making the decisions, then we've got some problems there, because the fighter should be worried about fighting, especially at this level. So I'm not sure whether he's taking advice from No Limit. Maybe it is his dad, I don't know, but it just seems a little bit rudderless at the moment. But the more I look at it, and even the way sort of Brock has spoken at the press conference and in some interviews since, I do get the feeling that maybe it is Brock saying, oh, I'm going to be the decision maker. And if that is the case, I don't think it's wise. And we have seen the change in demeanour from Brock. I mean, if you look at the interviews that he did 7-8 years ago, it is a totally different guy these days, and that's not a bad thing, because he's matured into a man and everything else. But even looking at that press conference he did with Keith Thurman, that wasn't Brock. That was totally manufactured. Interview with Keith. Sorry, I should say. That wasn't Brock. And I don't think Jeff was happy about that either. Actually, he did say he wasn't happy that Brock showed Thurman absolutely no respect, and he should have showed him a lot of respect. And Jeff just said, look, this is not the way, in his opinion, it should be done. There should be respect shown, and I agree with that. And I just think it's not all Brock's fault, again, because he hasn't probably got, well, I was going to say he hasn't really got an advisor. Jeff is supposed to be the advisor. I'm not sure whether Jeff said to him before that press conference, maybe, mate, just be yourself and don't get caught up in all the shit, and he didn't listen to him. I don't know, but that you would think that caused some friction as well. So look, I don't know, it's a lot of he said, she said sort of stuff, and I suppose at the end of the day, the one thing Jeff said was, well, I'm not his trainer at the moment, and we'll see if we can work things out. But we'll see what happens with Brock having his say. But yeah, it's not a great situation, is it? I mean, I really like the relationship between Brock and Jeff, and actually seeing it up close. What was that? 6-7 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever it was. Just a really, really tight knit team they were, not just Brock and Jeff, but the team that came down with them. So yeah, let's hope they work it out. But if they don't work it out, then I'm assuming that Brock's is going to have to get someone to take on that last 4 weeks of his prep, and then the fight itself. So not an ideal situation. So let's hope they work it out. All right, on to some other news. Now, I didn't mention it yesterday, and I forgot all about it. Actually, it might have been the day before, but it was Jeff Harding's birthday. The Hitman, and again, I forgot. So Jeff Hitman Harding, mate, we love you. One of the absolute icons of Aussie boxing. I've just spoke about him a week or two ago, about the most memorable fights or memories I have of Australian boxing, and his was almost top of the list. Actually, I think it might have been top of the list when he beat Dennis Andrews for that WBC light heavyweight title back in 1989, and what a time that was. And just talk about a guy who got absolutely everything out of himself. Not the most graceful guy, not the most technical guy, but geez, what a heart, what conditioning, just one of those fighters that you would hate to be in there within a 12-rounder, because you're just not going to get them out of there, and they'll be there to the end. And that was the case in that Andrews fight, wasn't it, when he came back in the 12th round. And even to the point where in the second fight, where Dennis Andrews came to Australia and stopped him in 7 rounds, and everyone thought, oh, well, there you go, there's the flash in the pan, all over. He's had his 15 minutes and first defence, he gives it up. There, all right, well, we'll move on. But he went back and he fought Andrews a 3rd time and beat him in London, I think it was, the 3rd fight. So interesting, they had 3 fights in 3 different countries. And also then had some great fights. Ended up losing to Mike McCallum, not that there's any disgrace in that, but had some really good wins, some good defences, and just a legend of Australian boxing. And I hope he's doing well. I'm not quite sure what he's up to these days, but really, really. Oh, hang on, buddy, come here. Oh, sorry, man. I'll just get here. Decided to chase a lady. But yeah, so I hope he's doing well in the scheme of things these days, and a very, very happy birthday. G'day to the Hitman. Now yesterday, George Kambosos did his first interview since the fight with Daud Yordan was announced, and I like the way he spoke, George. It's his first fight back in Sydney since 2016 when he beat Brandon Ogilvie. I still remember that fight. That was a really spiteful fight, and that was probably the first time I sort of took some real notice of George Kambosos. I'd heard a bit about him, seen a few clips and all that sort of stuff, but that was, the build up to that fight was actually quite big for pretty obscure type of Aussie fight. But I remember it got a lot of publicity. I think it was streamed online, so it wasn't on TV or anything like that. I'm pretty sure we had to stream it. It was at Luna Park in Sydney, and George has put on a clinic. He really went to town on Brandon Ogilvie, who was a very, very well-credentialed opponent. They had big plans for Brandon Ogilvie, and since that pretty much did nothing after that fight, George pretty much ended things for Brandon Ogilvie. And that was the kickstart for George to really go on from there. And of course he beat Lee Selby, Mickey Bay, and a few others on the road to that fight, to Teofimo Lopez. And and I'm sure he'll be glad to be back in Sydney. But yeah, I thought he spoke really well. I think he said that, look, I understand there's there's probably going to be some criticism from some people, but this guy's still dangerous. He did say he was a former 2-time world champion, which is not actually correct. I did have a good look at Daud Yordan's record yesterday, and look, he is well credentialed, make no mistake, but he is nearly 38 years of age. I think he might have had 1 fight in 3 years or something, hasn't been active, and the 2 titles that he won were, I think he's won a couple of IBA titles and an IBO title, or the other way around, 2 IBOs and an IBA. But look, no dramas with it, to be honest. I think I just said the other day that the only thing I probably am a little bit sceptical about is the fact that it was built up to be such a big announcement, and we get Daud Yordan. I have, excuse me, I have absolutely no issues at all with George Kambosos taking on Daud Yordan, getting back on the horse. He's a serviceable fighter, probably more journeyman status these days, but a good solid fighter who's going to give George some rounds, going to give him a real opportunity to shine and get back in the winner's circle, and who knows what can happen from there. And the odds are, by the sounds of things, he might fight the Hitchensons and Lopez winner maybe later in the year, or maybe it is Paro, maybe it's whoever, but he'll get a big fight out of it, and that's all that matters. So again, I was only just a little bit sceptical about the fact that it was this massive announcement coming and we're bringing big stadium fights back to Sydney, and that was the only thing I thought of. That's why I was like, what? Daud Yordan. But no dramas at all with George taking that fight. The undercard looks pretty good as well. Shanika Johnson, Nina Hughes in the rematch, and Sky Nicholson against Tara Brown, which will be an absolute cracker. Can't wait to see those fights. So the whole card in itself, it's going to be fantastic, and I'm sure there'll be more undercard fights announced. Teramona on that undercard as well. So some big stuff happening there in the next sort of couple of months with Aussie boxing. So now, one last thing I did see, actually a couple of things. One I did see is that I'm not sure what it was decided she was at the Olympics. Iman Khalif, I think it was, not a trans fighter. That was the fighter who had all the controversy about whether it was a male or female. Won the gold medal at the Olympics, has now been barred from the World Championships. Now, you're probably thinking, well, why? I don't even know. I suppose I'll call it she, because that's what she wants to be known as, and that's fine. He, she, whatever. I'll just call it Iman. I'll leave it up to you to decide what you want to call Iman. But you're probably asking, why was she allowed to compete at Paris and not the World Championships, pretty much a year later? Now, the reason is because at the Olympics, the IOC took control of the boxing, whereas the World Championships and everything else are controlled by the IBA, which is the amateur organisation. They don't get along, they're butted heads, and that's why the IOC said, step aside, you're not going to control the Olympics. And they overrid all the results that the IBA had received and put in place, banning Iman from competing. So she was found to be a biological male by the IBA, and that's why she was barred from all the events. But the IOC overrid that, and allowed her to compete at the Olympics, and of course won the gold medal. And but now it's back in the IBA's control. They've said no. So what do you think of that? Do you agree, disagree? I 100% agree that I'm going to keep calling her she, but she should not be allowed to fight at the Olympics. I know we've been all over this 100 times, by the way. Every person with an opinion commented on this during the Olympics, didn't they? Including me, pretty much every day for a week. But for me, no, I think the results have shown that she should be barred, as should that other boxer. Where was she from? Taiwan, I think it was, under the same condition. So that was just one thing that came up. Now, the other important thing that I did see as well, and I'm not too sure about all the details at the moment, but there's been some emergency talks in place between some pretty powerful people like the WBC president, Suleiman, Bob Arum, and a few others, about the prospect of Turki Al-Sheikh hooking up with Dana White to create the, I think they were going to call it the TKO Boxing League, where it was going to be set up like the UFC. Now, I'll probably talk a little bit more about that another time, but there is crisis talks about that, trying to work out how it would work, how they would probably stop it, because if they had a TKO boxing league with a UFC format, how that would affect the state of boxing. So I'm going to do a little bit more research on it, and I might talk about it tomorrow, but something to consider and maybe research yourself. But guys, that is going to do it for today. Hope you have a great Thursday. I'm going to jump in the car and head to work and get this little man home, and we'll catch you tomorrow.